Welcome back, everyone. It's been some time, I admit. There were a lot of reasons for my break, and some of them are even legitimate, but that's not important right now. What's important right now is that we look ridiculous. We are, for a very specific purpose, dressed up in this gear. Currently we are wearing the Smelter Demon helmet, the Chaos chest and the Chaos trousers, and the penal cuffs. The reason that we have put together this motley assortment of clothing is for fire resistance. We are also wearing the Dispelling Ring +1 and the Fire Quartz Ring +3. We also have Flash Sweat slotted in, so it does not take very much deductive power to figure out that we need to take some damage from fire soon. You may also notice, if you're paying attention, that there are no enemies here. Off camera, I went and cleaned them out. This boss run, if you need to make a boss run, and you probably will, is extremely difficult with enemies still there. So I just decided to save myself some trouble in recording and just make sure everything would stop respawning before I tried this. It takes a while, but I don't regret the decision. Now, speaking of decisions that you might regret. The Ancient Dragon is not just a set piece or a prop. Despite what Nashandra might say, you can actually interact with it. Well, interact might be a slightly gentle way of putting what we're about to do. After a couple of hits, you will aggro him and the fight will begin properly. So, the Ancient Dragon is a terrible fight that you shouldn't do. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Don't do this fight. There is very little reason to do this fight except for completion's sake. It's boring, it's long, and it's frustrating. I feel like this might even be somewhat intentional to sort of punish players for their bloodthirsty ways. At any rate, the Ancient Dragon is huge, and his primary means of attack is breathing fire, which is why we want all that fire resistance. If you have over 900, even his flames will not do much damage to your health bar. You want to keep Flash Sweat applied during this fight. You also want to never get hit ever by any of his physical attacks because they will kill you in one fucking hit. This is why the fight is frustrating. He has the most health out of, I think, any enemy in the game. Regardless of what New Game Plus cycle you're on, he will always have the most of that cycle. And as you can see, most of his attacks have wide reach, long range, and do, quite frankly, heinous amounts of damage. One of the reasons that I would recommend clearing this clearing this area of enemies out before you try this, is simply that you're going to need to try it a lot. No matter how good you are at the game beforehand, the Ancient Dragon requires a very specific subset of skills and patience to overcome. To the point where I would say, again, you really shouldn't do this fight. There's no reason to, really. But I must suffer for my art. So, trying this again. Last attempt, we didn't even see his main gimmick. It's not too difficult to actually dodge his fire breath on the ground. However, he does have something else he can do. Here it is. Fairly regularly, he will take to the skies and basically carpet bomb the area with his fire. He will then land. Now, it's not impossible to dodge this fire, but it's very difficult to do so consistently unless you get into a very specific pattern. Therefore, I would recommend before you try this fight to kit yourself out in as much fire resistance as you can, no matter which way you actually want to go about it. As you can see, we take very little damage from the fire, but sometimes he lands on you with his chin and you die, and it's sort of... Once more into the breach. Another thing that I would recommend for this fight is not to waste your human effigies. There are two reasons why I say this. One, if you're doing it this way and you've got high fire resistance, then you're either taking basically no damage at all or you're getting killed in one hit. So your maximum health sort of doesn't matter. You can sort of abuse this with the red Tearstone ring if you're so inclined, but you still do sort of have to keep an eye on how much damage you're taking from the fire, so that can get a little dicey and a little difficult to set up. If you want to try it, it's probably one of the better options. Ranged attacks are also a more effective way of doing this, especially with the high fire resistance. The Ancient Dragon is weak to lightning, which is why we're using I almost said the Giant Slayer Spear, but that's another thing. The Dragon Slayer Spear. As a small mercy, your souls always get deposited outside of the room. Let's give this another shot. Now, I've been a little coy about this until now, but at this point I feel comfortable saying that the way to fight him is not actually to attack his head. Also, sometimes this happens. He'll just jump literally right on top of you. You also don't want to lock onto him if you can avoid it. Alright, so now that we've gotten the failures out of the way that sort of illustrate why this fight is obnoxious and something you probably shouldn't do, let's do it right. And you'll probably wish that we kept failing because that's more interesting. Whatever charm the Dragon Shrine had is now sort of lost on me because I'm just sick of it. Now, the secret to the Ancient Dragon fight is that it's not actually hard per se. It's very unforgiving because if you make a single mistake, you will die, but it's fairly easy not to make a mistake. What you actually have to do is not that demanding. It just requires that you keep track of your flash sweats, have the right equipment, and don't get too greedy. So obviously it's going to be tough for a lot of us, myself included. I am prone to some major greed every now and again. Alright, here we go. So, as we have learned long ago, the weakness of any reptilian overlord is not the head, but instead the toes. For reasons largely unknown to me, he will take just as much damage from attacks to his toes as he will to his head. If you go for his toes, you can get him into a very easily exploitable pattern, wherein he will breathe fire, you can go in and hit him, and then once you're out of stamina, you can back off, run away, and repeat the process ad nauseum. It is not necessary to run this far away to dodge the fire, but it's sort of annoying to get knocked around because even if you take no damage, you will get knocked down. There's also the consideration that if you get hit by the fire, there is a chance, however slight, that you will get knocked off of the platform, and that is obviously something you want to avoid. You want to keep track of where he is, and you can probably afford to lock on at this point. but when you're actually moving around and trying to hit his feet, I would recommend just leaving it be. I would also recommend against running too far back, because that means that you can hit him fairly significantly less before he flies away again. It's not impossible to hit him while he's flying, but it is very difficult. Mostly because any weapon that has a necessary punch to do appreciable damage to him will have a fairly long recoil to it. So if you try to like slam him with a great bow or something, you'll probably either not be in position to hit his toes when he gets down, or worst case scenario, he'll frickin' land on you. Attacking him while he's on the ground with ranged weapons, however, is a fairly easy way of dealing with him, albeit it's boring and expensive, as opposed to this method, which is just boring. You're really not meant to fight this guy. To a certain extent, I'm not sure why this fight is in the game. It even has its own unique music track, which is pretty good, I guess, but the whole thing is a little bit baffling. I feel like, in a way, they wanted to make a proper big dragon fight in the Sunken King DLC with Sin the Slumbering Dragon, and while it's sort of damned with faint praise, it is at least better than this fight. Before you come in here, if you're going with this high fire resistant strategy, you'll also want to bring along some amber herbs, some healing items, and some repair powder. That was really close, and I'm super glad I didn't die there. I might have been in his hitbox for actually getting smooshed, but fortunately, I think I was in an invincibility frame rolling right at the moment where I would have been hit, so I lived to fight another day. As you do this over and over again, you'll start learning slight optimizations to the pattern. For instance, you want to stay slightly ahead of him and confirm that he's going to breathe fire before you rush in for the toes. Otherwise, he might not breathe fire and then he will immediately go to fly up and stomp you, which is not necessarily bad in as much that you can probably dodge it okay, it just gives you much less time to actually hit him. Now, of course, this also wastes time, and you're sort of not doing anything while you wait for him to breathe fire, so it is, to say the least, an imperfect solution. Provided that you're not running low on spell restoration items, then I would be very liberal with using Flash Sweat. Amber herbs are not exactly precious, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Without high fire resistance, the fire will also one-shot you, so it pays to be cautious in this fight above all else. I feel like this might have actually been a fight they were thinking about when they were designing Bloodborne and decided that maybe excessive caution wasn't the most scintillating gameplay. Bloodborne is not perfect by any means, but there are no fights quite like the Ancient Dragon, and that was a relief. Repair powder is especially important if you're using a special weapon like the Dragon Slayer Spear. The Lightning Bolt strong attack actually does quite a bit of damage to his toe because the model is big. I probably could have gotten away with doing it more, especially because at this point the price of repair powder is not especially high. anything to speed this up. There is precisely one reason to actually kill this guy. We'll discuss it a little bit when we're done. For now, just know that the Ancient Dragon holds a bit of a secret. If you need to use consumables or reapply Flash Sweat, then the obvious time to do them is when I've been doing them, in between his fire breath and landing. The Ancient Dragon is actually very non-aggressive, at least in and of as much that his attacks are very slow, and he does not often actively come after you. So, if you need to retreat, heal, regroup, he will probably let you do that. He'll breathe his fire at you, but provided that you've taken the necessary precautions, it won't really do anything. Getting near the end of the fight, I start getting even more paranoid about dying to fire, so I reapply Flash Sweat a lot. Now this is a bit difficult. Sometimes he will leap towards you like this, and you will run out of room to safely dodge his fire. Not during this phase, but when he jumps up. You can't simply back away towards the door like I've been doing, because if you do, not only will you get burned, he'll probably frickin' land on you. So instead, you need to make a mad dash towards the other side of the arena, which is a little scary because there's no guardrail, but provided that you're not too close, you won't get knocked off. Now, of course, this sort of realignment of the dragon is a problem. It disrupts the pattern a bit. You need to make sure that he's in a safe spot before you can continue wailing on him, unless you want to suffer a humiliating defeat. And overall, it doesn't serve much purpose except to delay the fight. Sometimes you wish you would logged on, but believe me, it's better this way. Now, for our victory, we get something fairly expected in the Petrified Dragon Bone, and something somewhat unexpected. The soul of a giant. This raises some interesting questions about the origin of the Ancient Dragon. The Ancient Dragon holds the fifth and final giant soul in the game. I believe I have said before, in ages past at some point, that you should not consume those souls. We will explore why in the next video. Before we do, I'm going through a bit of preparation and changing my equipment. The next boss requires another fairly specific set of attributes to safely engage. Not as specific as the Ancient Dragon, and is overall a much better fight because you have a lot more freedom in the ways that you can approach it. Still, we're going to want to get out of our ridiculous anti-fire get-up. The Drake Blood set should suffice. It's powerful armor with a reasonable weight point. As for rings, First I need to navigate through my entire collection, which is easier said than done sometimes. Do some contemplating, and settle on the Simpleton's Ring, because dodge rolling is exceptionally important in the next fight, even more so than it is in the rest of the game. Shields will not avail you here, not against the Ancient Dragon or against the fight coming up. Now I'm just picking a weapon, which is more difficult than you might think. In fact, I can say right now that I don't end up settling on the choice I make here. I apologize if the menu surfing is a little bit boring, but I know that it's also been a long time since an update, and I'm trying to sort of pad this out so people have something to watch. I'm not sure if that's really a good idea or not, but it sounded good at the time. The next boss is not weak to fire, but takes appreciable damage from spells like Great Combustion. And Firestorm, actually, if you are brave enough to try and use it. However, I chose the safer Great Fireball. Now that we are properly kitted out, next time we will pay a certain king a visit. Having a full health bar for that fight is actually very recommended, so be sure to unhollow before you take him on. For now, though, I hope that you have enjoyed, I suppose, the fight against the Ancient Dragon, and at least appreciated that now you don't have to do it ever. Because you've seen me do it, and that should probably be enough. I'll see you next time when we put a tortured soul to rest.